Thank you very much, Chair Comer. I have to confess I don't use 23andMe. I've never been tested for genetics, but I certainly have a lot of customers who have chosen to use 23andMe, and I've heard from a lot of them. But Mr. Selsavage, I understand that customers of 23andMe can choose to consent to have their individual genetic information shared with your researchers. What protections were put in place to protect your customers from the misuse of that data?
First, our customer data and our policies are always putting our customers first.
Right. Reclaiming my time, just briefly, what protections are in place to protect your customers from misuse of that data?
First, and they can have the right to actually remove their consent to that data for being used for research policies at any time. The company always has provided researchers with de-anonymized data. We are not providing individual identifiers when we actually share that data for any research purpose.
And I believe you also have protections that it's explicitly limited to just research purposes, right? You couldn't go ahead and sell that to Goldman Sachs, right?
Our research consents are, first, there's a research consent that only 23 can use their data for research purposes, and there is a separate individual consent for using that data with third parties.
Right, but I understand that. But I'm looking at your terms of service right now, and I don't see any specific language giving 23andMe any ownership rights to people's individual level genetic or health information. Is that correct?
That's correct. Our customers' data
reclaiming my time. Under the section that's described as licensing and IP rights, your terms of agreement state that you get a license to use quote-unquote user content, which is described as information, data, things like that are generated by users of the service and transmitted to you. It goes on to say specifically user content does not include genetic or health information. I take it from this and the fact that licensing rights for individual genetic or health data are not mentioned anywhere else in your terms of service, that you also don't receive a licensing right or royalty rights to people's individual genetic or health data. Is that correct?
I'm not a lawyer, but
you don't own it. You don't own the data individually of people. You can use it for some purposes, for research, if they consent to it, but you don't have an ownership right in that. I think you just said that. Is that correct?
That is correct. Our customers own their data, and they control that data at all times.
So I want to re-ask the question. Could you share somebody's individual data, genetic data, with Goldman Sachs or Elon Musk or with the Chinese government? Could you sell it to the highest bidder?
Our policies state that, basically we can actually
Let me, reclaiming my time. Yeah. If I was really interested in the genetic data of Chairman Comer, could I buy Chairman Comer's data if he was a client of your service?
No, you could not.
Why not?
Because we don't have the right to share.
Because you don't own it, right? You don't own the rights to that. Could you sell the homes of your customers? Could you sell any other assets they owned? The answer is no, because you don't own that, right? So you don't own people's genetic or health information. So I guess I'm really just wondering why you think you can sell this data at an individual level to a third-party company that's coming in, where we don't. I know you're talking about protections on that data, but I'm just wondering. I'm not a customer of yours, but for those who are, including my constituents, why are you selling their genetic data when you don't own it?
The terms of service and the agreements at 23.
I've looked at your terms of service. Yeah.
Mentioned that we can basically, in the event of a sale of the company or a bankruptcy of the company, that the data can be transferred to the new company.
Look, 23andMe, what you guys do, I think at your height, you seem like you were doing great things, but you fall into a clear regulatory gap here between HIPAA and GINA, as I think has been described. And I think this is one of those rare instances where my Republican colleagues and I we all agree on the problems that this raises. And I think it's clear that we need some kind of regulatory protection. So I guess I'm going to ask you, in the meantime, before we address this with law, I want to echo the point made by my colleague, Rep. Presley. Why won't you commit to what seems like a very reasonable and common sense opt-in policy, given that you're about to sell people's individual level genetic data, very valuable information, very personal information? Why won't you commit to doing that? It seems like a very reasonable thing to do.
Congressman, we believe our customers have already consented to this transfer of their data through the consents that they signed up for when they signed up for the service. Second, we've provided the customers with notice of the bankruptcy, and we'll be providing them with notice of who the company will
do you check every email you read?
I don't.
I certainly don't, and I certainly might miss an email or several emails like this. And I would just encourage you to think about an opt-in policy, because what you're describing right now is the transfer and sale of data that is very, very personal. And I personally find it very outrageous that you're not allowing people to opt into this, not giving them that right, knowing that the open rates of your emails are probably very low. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I hate